Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new New World video. First, I know the good majority of you lovely members of the cave wanted to see a crafting video this week, but as we just finished up the open beta, I thought it would be most appropriate to talk about the changes that were tested during this beta. It may also be important to note that most of the changes that Amazon made were not super effective to crafting. We'll still go over it though. And right at the top, I'm announcing that because we're only a couple weeks away from the official release of the game, it is time to start our main giveaway. Because of my involvement in the Battle for New World, AGS has given the channel some copies of the game to give away. So make sure you're subscribed, stay subscribed, like, and comment on the video. The giveaway link will be in the description as well as the pinned comment. I won't even put giveaway in the title, so everybody that actually watches the video and interacts with it will get a fair chance. So, there are patch notes that came out when the beta launched. The detailed changes that the team made between the closed beta and the open. On a similar note, there's also a page that covers the known issues in the game. I will leave both links in the description. Here are the things that I think were good changes to New World. Expeditions. Most of the changes to expeditions were bug fixes, which is good. There isn't much that really we need to talk about what has changed here. It's like bosses not spawning, certain things not allowing you to move forward. I didn't really see a whole lot of them myself. I saw a couple during the closed beta, but I did see lots of clips where it did happen. So these are all great fixes, and just more things that show that we're on the right path. So, next to world changes. Ship flags on starter beaches. I think I had a few problems with those, so that's good. That's good that changed. The big thing that stuck out to me in this section were the improved spawn rates. Theoretically, they're good. So, what they did was they improved spawn rates throughout the world at locations where bottlenecking players in the same quests and missions, as well as a few other things. But they changed the spawn rates a little bit, in certain areas feeling a little too much. I felt like I had just killed something, and if it was a little above my level, it took me a little bit to kill the next thing, and then all of a sudden things were spawned right behind it again. So if you're waiting for somebody in a certain section because maybe somebody died and you couldn't rescue them, you're constantly fighting things there, which, you know, theoretically is pretty good because you're getting XP, but at the same time, it kind of is a little bit of a pain in the butt, and you have to go find a place to hide and try not to just constantly get bashed over and over again. But with that same vein, I would say that some of the bosses that are meant to be spawning for quests it's a decent spawn rate, but the credit that is dispersed between people for getting the quest done is still a little wishy-washy. So obviously, as always, being in a group when doing these missions and these quests is good. It will give more credit to that group, but I also noticed that it gives credit to more than just a single group. So they are fixing it, and they are working on balancing that more. I'm providing as much feedback as possible. I hope you guys did too, and maybe they'll fix it a little bit more. But I think for the most part, it is better. But I think there's still a little bit of work to be done. And then quests. They fixed multiple quests across the world that were causing bottlenecks due to large amount of players attempting the same objective. Same thing. I noticed that the mob spawns almost spawn, like I said, immediately. It seemed really fast. I know that it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but this is it's a different note. So it makes sense to pay attention to this, and if there is required more. If it's required more to change, then hopefully they do so. I'm just mentioning it here again so that hopefully this makes a little bit more sense. If you haven't played it, then it's probably not a big thing, but if you remember games like original WoW, or now that WoW Classic came back, it sort of had the same problem of like people lining up to do stuff. It's not that bad. It's not as bad as WoW is, but there are people that kind of just wait there. With this fix, there was a few more bugs that came up, and I'm sure they're aware of it. It's in the known issues problem, or known issues page. where some bosses would just kind of get stuck and not be able to get hit. I do believe that is at the top of their list because that did stop people immediately from progressing. Obviously, you can go do more quests unless it's the story quest, but they're very well aware of that, so that should change by the time the game comes out. Considering what they did broke it, and so I'm sure that it's a little bit easier to nail it down. So don't worry, it'll get better. Now onto AI. Increased damage scaling for AI for level 50 and above. Gradual scaling from 0% to 25% at level 66. Which is good because when you get to about level 40, 35, 40 is when, in the next note, they'll touch on this too, is where you're going to be starting to get more into your build and starting to theory craft how you can get the most damage or health or healing out from that. Up to level 30, I would say maybe 25, 30, you're not really worried about it because it's just whatever gear the game gives you. You're not really doing many expeditions. You unlock Amrine excavation at about 1920, but you don't really start doing a lot of the big gear changes until about 25. So once you start grinding it at 25 and getting the quests for those things, getting the faction quests for those, you'll start getting more gear and you'll be able to fine tune it a little bit more. I wouldn't worry too much about armor or weapons until about then, and even then that might even still be a little bit early. So the next note, increasing health scaling from AI for AI above level 30, gradually scaling from 0 to 15% at level 66 is part of that as well. So it's a lot of the AI is gonna be doing more damage to you, and it's gonna take more to kill. But at a certain point, some of the AI were really easy, especially once we started getting really good gear or fine-tuning it a little bit better. So if you're not paying attention to what your gear is, it will be very difficult. But for the most part, you'll get it. You'll be fine as long as you are watching our guides and getting gear tips and, you know, working with your company, or just paying attention to what you're putting on yourself, you know. There's a few different notes that come in later that will kind of force you to pay attention to those things. So pay attention to what we're talking about here. I'm going to say pay attention 3 more times. So increase the health and damage to bring non-boss elites more in line with expedition difficulties. This is multiplicative with the noted change above. So what we just said. This is mainly for like open world expeditions and main expeditions like Amrine. I noticed the change, but it wasn't huge. Granted, I didn't spend a ton of time. The amount of time that I spent in the open beta versus the closed beta is vastly different. I spent enough time to be able to figure these things out for you all, and then see what the changes felt like. I got a good amount of experience between what a lot of the changes felt like and how I can compare them to the closed beta. So I will say that a lot of this you could feel. Some of it you couldn't, but a lot of this you could feel right away. So this is interesting and important to note that it will be a little bit more difficult, but not in the sense that it's going to just be more of a pain in the butt. It's more just going to feel like it's just a balancing act, really. It's all it's doing, it's balancing. It's just going to feel more normal to you. And then increased damage of non-boss open world elites AI by 12 to 17%. So same thing. They're going to be doing more damage, which if you're attempting... So we made a video earlier about attempting to make or to power level, or at least power level your weapon XP. This is going to be a little bit harder because you're going to probably need somebody with you that is a little bit more tanky, or going to be able to kill the mobs faster, because now they're going to do more damage. I don't know if this change was made because of videos like mine, but because I don't think it was an exploit, but it was something that you could do, and not that you can't do it anymore, it's just going to be a little bit more tricky. So keep that in mind, and try not to die too many times and spend too much money on repair tools and whatnot. Increased health of AI plus AI, or sorry, Elite plus, which are the the corrupted ones, the ones that you find in the breaches, by 60%. So, again, this is something that is going to be a little bit more difficult. But the big thing here, and why I am more on board with this note than the last note, is this is for mostly corruption zones, where it is meant to be group activity. I was able to solo most of the at least tier 1 and tier 2 corruption zones by level 40 or 50, and that shouldn't be a thing. I know that there's going to be a point where people are going to just want to be soloing these things, but it's the reason you're doing these corruption zones are for expeditions, which is group content. And if you want to be doing group content, you should be doing group content, right? And if you don't want to be doing group content and you want to grind something on your own, I definitely understand that this is tough, but it just means that you're going to have to grind out, like get to like level 40 or 50 and grind out maybe only tier 1s, which you can do. So it's a harsh change. I think 17% is not huge, but it's enough to be obviously noticeable. So it really comes down to, do you want to do group content with a group? I don't think that it'll be very difficult to pick people up from the public, although I know we all dislike that. But again, if you're watching these videos, hopefully you'll be on the same server as us and we'll be able to help you. So anyway, same thing with elite, or with the health. So not only are they changing, oh no, they're not changing damage, they're only changing health. So you're not going to die as much or more, but obviously with this game, the more that the enemy survives, the more chances you have to die, because there's a lot of things that come right down to the wire. So get good at your dodging, I guess. Increase damage for all expedition AI by 13%. This is multiplicative with the changes above. So same thing. In the expeditions, it got to a point where I think some things were just a little bit too easy to just wipe through, especially once you started gearing up. So this is just meant to make your first trial feel pretty difficult, which it's supposed to, especially if it's part of the story, and then make it, you know, more normalized as it goes on. And then bug fixes. So bug fixes got changed. That's great. That's awesome. That's some things you want to see. Combat. This is where things get a little bit more interesting as well. This is where things I noticed more in PvP. Granted, like I said, in the open beta, I didn't really get too high level PvE stuff, so it was less noticeable there. But then again, it could be more noticeable later, especially with the level 40 and above, or sorry, level 30 and above, and level 50, 40 and above, getting harder. So keep in mind with this. Reduced constitution attribute, the 250 attribute, which is I believe the max, threshold bonus damage reduction from 80% to 60%. This is a good thing, but it's also kind of a bad thing. This will fit in the good section, I think, for the most part. It will have bad things. We'll talk about that later, because there are some other changes that came in that are going to be affecting this. Reduced Warhammer Hardened Steel damage reduction bonus from 20% to 15%. This is great. This is actually a good thing. But unfortunately, as they started to balance things out, there's something going on with the Warhammers. I used a Warhammer for a bit in PvP, and some things just weren't registering. But apparently it was not just me. It was a lot of other players having this too. So this should get fixed eventually. Pay attention to the Warhammers. I think the Warhammers are getting a really nice balance. I think that they were extremely OP, especially when players had the Warhammer and War Axe or Great Axe combo, whereas basically stun fest and then do tons of damage with the Great Axe exploit. The Great Axe is still very good. We'll get into that in a moment, because they're pretty much my entire server that we played on were mostly running Great Axes and life staffs. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I think will change once you get past a certain level. So the sword. There's a few things with the sword. As a main sword user myself, I was very interested in this section, as there's a lot of them. So Freeing Justice passive will now only remove a single debuff, not all debuffs. I get it. It was extremely powerful. If you have a bunch of people dropping stuff on you, or mobs, which they do often put debuffs on you, getting rid of all of them is very powerful. I felt like being a tank in this game was one of the strongest things because essentially, even if somebody really good with a great axe or a bow came after you, there were a lot of things you can kind of do to close the gap while still only taking like half your damage. So this is a lot of these changes are going to be for the better, even though as a main sword user, I am a little sad. Anyway, Fortitude has been replaced with Invigorating Bulwark. This passive will grant 15 stamina on hit, and with the Shield Bash and Shield Rush abilities, which is always good for a tank. So yeah, you always want as much stamina as you possibly can have. Granted, like not blocking for like 10, 5, 3, 4, 5 seconds or something like that will give you all your stamina back. It's pretty quick. Leaping Strike startup frames reduced from 16 to 14. That is only a good thing because Leaping Strike distance was increased from 4 to 6 meters. So, well, sorry, I take that back. That is doubly a good thing because of that, because of both of those notes together. So, Leaping Strike is one of the easiest ways to close the gap between you and somebody trying to attack you with any type of ranged weapon. I spent a lot of time PvPing. I kind of created a couple rivals and a couple of allies in the open world PvP during the beta. But there's somebody using a ice glaive, the frost glaive. Ice gauntlet. That's what it's called. Somebody using the ice gauntlet, and basically there was something else going on that maybe I'm not aware of, but it felt like he was putting a wall in front of me and I just couldn't move forward. I can move left and right just fine, but I couldn't move forward. So either something wasn't rendering or something that I'm unaware of was happening with the ice gauntlet. But essentially, I needed more abilities to close the gap, or else they just own you, right? They don't even have to be very powerful. They just kind of own you. Granted, I was able to just have a fire staff out, which helped me distract them with some damage while I was able to close the gap, but not having too many abilities made that very difficult. Granted, as a sword and shield user, that's not really the purpose, but you need something to balance out everything. So both of these notes are useful. So Leaping Strike should be something in your build if you're going to PvP. I don't think it's a huge thing if you're PvE focused, but for PvP it is pretty important. Next, counterattack has been modified to be able to stack and obtain a better bonus. It now grants a 3% empower for 5 seconds while blocking an attack, and can stack up to 5 times for a max of 15% empower bonus. Previously, it would grant 10% empower for 20 seconds after blocking an attack. So, while the empower bonus has been increased, for somebody or something to be able to give you that full bonus, either the person you're PvPing just doesn't know the sword and shield build very well, which is how the games should be. Like, it should be very much based on knowledge and skill versus just skill, right? Or, lag or whatever it is. They have to hit you 5 times. So instead of just blocking once and then going full bore on them, which is basically what I was doing in the closed beta, I'd let somebody hit me in the shield, and then I would just rush them and be able to essentially out damage them because the empower on my sword was it was gonna out DPS them even as a tank build. So now you have to play pretty tanky for a little bit, get that bonus up, and then go after them. It's a more tactical play. It's a more tactical balance. I like this balance. Again, it makes it harder on me, but at the same time, it makes it harder on everyone else. And, well, it's just better for the game. So, I think this is a good bonus, and I think that there's something that if you're going to be playing a sword, pay attention to this. If you're going to be playing against a sword, also pay attention to this. So, basically, everybody in that game should be paying attention to that main change. So, yeah. Anyway, Life Staff. Healer's got a lot of changes in this beta, so pay attention to some of these Life Staff changes and some of the things later on. So Life Staff, Sacred Protection passive changed to grant a 5% increase incoming healing efficiency to all group members, used to grant additional max HP. So this means that you can't cheese things. I mean, essentially, I'm sure it was very much a thing to where I didn't see this too much, but I'm sure it's because of what I see here. Somebody was probably doing this where if you granted sacred protection on them, you could just heal them either further to be even more of a giant behemoth tank, or somebody could just get that and then take a potion and then they'd already have it there. So with this means more increased healing, which on one hand could be also a bad thing, because healing was very powerful in the closed beta. So it's gonna be interesting to see more in practice. I saw a lot of healing go out. I saw a lot of healers on our server. Basically, everybody said they were a healer, but I think there was a lot of people just trying to test the new systems that were in place, the new balances. I think that it's going to take a lot more work to be a healer, which is important because of the fact that healers are extremely powerful and extremely required to do mostly anything in this game. It's also why in our leveling guides, we will be talking about why you should be leveling a life staff, basically no matter what build you're doing. And then with that same note, reduced effectiveness of Orb of Protection Fortify from 15 to 10%. Fortify was extremely powerful. It still is. I would say it's one of the most powerful buffs in the game. So the fact that you can just stack it on people is extreme. So a tank with a healer behind them can have up to it's 4 or 5, maybe even 6 stacks of Fortify. So it makes them very powerful. So being able to reduce that is always good. It's only 5% instead of I would have brought it down maybe even to 5% total. But still, it's there, it's lesser, and it's still very powerful to be using, so it's a nice balance, so it works. The Hatchet. Berserk duration during reduced Berserk duration reduced to 12 seconds, and the cooldown has been increased to 18 seconds. So if any of you played the preview, which was even before the closed beta, about a year ago, the Hatchet was one of the most overpowered weapons in the game. There were a few bugs with it and exploits with it, which was what made it so powerful, but it was just a powerful weapon. I got a chance to use it in the open beta quite a bit, and I didn't mind it. I didn't like it in the closed beta too much, but I didn't mind it. A lot of these changes, even if they seem small, were pretty good. So going from 12 to 18 seconds of Berserk, which is more damage, is very interesting. I think there are also a couple of other abilities and perks that bounce off of Berserk, or at least get benefited from Berserk. So it was pretty good. I'd say the Hatchet feels nice right now. At late game, I don't know what it's going to be like. I know that Hatchet runners tend to... I said Hatchet runners like we're talking about Tarkov. I know that Hatchet users tend to run from fights a lot, and they can usually just get away with it. But again, you'll see another change here that will make that a little bit more difficult. Berserking Refresh now heals 10% every 4 seconds, while Berserk is active to a max of 30% health, was every 5 seconds for a max of 35% health. Again, because of the increase of Berserking Refresh being nerfed a little bit is net probably a good thing. I didn't really get to use Berserking Refresh too much because I just didn't get there. But I would assume that because you're supposed to be this Berserker, this very squishy, high damaging unit, you don't want that person to also be able to run away and heal, you know? So, this is a good thing. The Great Axe. The Great Axe is, again, it's very powerful. People are still maining it. I think there are many ways to counter it, but for the most part, if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna get absolutely shreked by anybody with a Great Axe. But with these changes here, you'll see that there is a bit of a easier way to deal with them, and it makes them a little bit less powerful. But still very good. So don't mind these nerfs. These nerfs were required, in my opinion. Reduced effectiveness of Gravity Well Unyielding Fortify upgrade from 15% to 10%. Very good. Keeps them a little bit more killable still. So you know, the Gravity Well by itself is very powerful. It's basically it's the easiest way to gank somebody, especially if they're either half health or low on health, and you have a couple of people with you, and somebody straggles behind that you're chasing, and you just hit them with the gravity wall and they can't go anywhere, you just smash them. If you have like a hammer user and you grab like 2 or 3 of them, you can still do a lot of damage. So the fact that that is so powerful by itself, the other bonuses are needed to be a little bit less powerful. Reduce Great Axe Enduring Strike damage reduced by, does that say reduced twice? It does. Reduced bonus from 20% to 15%. Yeah, same thing. You're doing, you're doing more damage, you're doing a ton of damage, so making it easier to kill people who have great axes is always a good thing. Second hit from Reap no longer has stagger on hit. So, yeah, I mean, again, both the great axe and the warhammer are very frustrating to fight because of both stagger and stuns. There's tons of them on both of those weapons. The first hit staggering is still a problem, but it needs to be there so that it's not totally neutered. So there you go. The bow. Reducing effectiveness of bow unbreakable focus fortify passive from 20% to 10%. I think this is just more indication that the devs saw how powerful fortify was. So being able to have that and reduce it is just, that's just going to keep happening. Who knows? They may have overcorrected. They may change later. It's hard to tell without having at least a few weeks in the game to be able to test all of it. But from what we saw, it felt like people were killable. So we'll see. I'm sure that most of these abilities were just not even accepted by a lot of people. Yet at that point is what I mean. Chain perks. Chain perks. The first one reduced the number of times chain perks chained to another target. It used to be 5, now it's 3. That is only a good thing because of the second note. Chain elemental perks now trigger off basic attacks, light and heavy, and have a 2-second cooldown. So, essentially, most weapons, from what I understand, can get chain perks. It depends on the roll, depends on what you put on it, all kinds of things. I may be wrong there, and please correct me if I am, but most things can get chain perks. From what I've noticed is almost every type of weapon that I found had 1 or 2, whether it was lightning or void damage or what have you. If you haven't seen the visual effect, it's actually pretty cool. You can notice it very clearly. But the thing is, it didn't happen super often unless you had a very high stat on it. Now, because they'll trigger off of light and heavy, you have to be able to reduce the number of targets because there were a lot. There were a lot of things dying very quickly because of how many things it chained to. It also, I think, made the game a little bit visually laggy, so I think just having that was helpful. Not that that was part of their change, but just a side note. So this is a good thing. I know it's tough, and I'm sure a lot of people loved using really nice chain perks. I feel like some of the people I played with requested those when putting stuff in there. It's like, hey, I'll take something if you get a roll on a chain perk, whatever, because they were very powerful. So hopefully with all this, it'll still be powerful, but less so because you can actually trigger it more often, which is still very, very good. Okay, this is the big stuff. This is huge. The equipment load updates. This is what is going to make it harder to be a healer, or at least trickier to be a healer. The 20% damage increase for light equip load and 10% and the 10% damage increase for medium equip load should also affect the healing output for the character. Healing is reduced by 20% to account for this. We want the best healer to be in light gear. Exactly. Healing was and is still extremely powerful when soloing, when attempting to be just survivable during, PvP fights, what have you. There were many instances where one really good healer who also had like a rapier, being able to just move from point to point to point and then just heal themselves before they can be killed, was incredible. So with that, they want healers to be able to be killed when caught. They'll still be able to do all their dashes and twirls and just just not get hit by anything like they're Neo in the Matrix. But if they do get caught, they'll be able to at least get the chance to be killed so that they don't just recover immediately anyway. I don't know how much of this was a gear thing before, but giving people the ability to still do it's at least the step in the right direction. Reduced medium equip load threshold from 15 to 13 and heavy threshold from 30 to 23. So, because of this makes it, well, I don't know if it made it harder, but from what we noticed in looking at this it was difficult just by itself to stay in the light load category. In fact, until level like 22 or something like that, our healer had to go shirtless the whole time because none of the shirts that they had were, powerful enough to do anything in light version, or it was just not getting dropped. And all the ones that were good were at least medium, which the shirt being the heaviest part will increase your load almost immediately. So it's gonna be harder to get light. You're gonna have to go light on everything, pretty much. Not be able to kind of have a couple of medium pieces without worrying about going into the medium load. Also remember that you don't have to wear your shield if you're not using it, and that increases your weight as well. So just take off, if you have a shield, just take it off, because if you're not using it, you're not getting any perks from it. So don't use it if you're trying to heal. Armor. Normalize the weight of protection ratios. That's all pretty huge. So not only are people going to not just go light and medium so that they can, roll and get out of the way faster, although I don't think medium rolls either. But the point is that a tank is going to be a tank, right? They're not going to be able to roll, they're not going to be able to go crazy dodge mode, but they'll be able to take a little bit more damage because, well, you will have heavier gear. I mean, it'll just literally be thicker and be able to absorb more. Increase the armor provided by chest pieces and reduce the amount provided by helmets. So your chest piece is going to be more important if you're a tank. The helmet, which I believe the purpose for this is because there are a lot of medium helmets that are good for tanks. So they don't want you worrying about going heavy simply because you need more armor. I believe that one of the best helmets I found for myself as a tank was a medium helmet, so keep that in mind. Also, there may be some stuff that helps your dexterity that is light. You'll have light armor that helps your dexterity, so if you need to go light on your helmet, I believe that's the reason for this note, so there you go. Slightly increase the armor granted by balance ratios to match our total armor provided by physical and elemental ratios. Same thing. Reduce the weight of round and kite shields, which, like I was just talking about, having a shield in your back increases your weight on whether or not you're using it with, and if you don't have your sword out, you're not getting perks from your shield. So essentially, it's just a big weight on your back. It's literally that. So if you have to have it, or maybe you're like myself who just pulls out a fire staff or a bow or something else, you're not totally encumbered by that. I would say most of the time that's for those that want to stay around the medium level, like maybe high medium level, because they're not using their sword and shield to tank mostly. They're using it simply for a little bit of defense while they go mostly offense. That should be pretty useful for them. Let's see. Clamping of empower and fortify buffs. Potions will now be included in clamping of the empower and fortify buffs 50% max. This is just to help balance everything. So because of the fact that you can get fortify from other players and as well as yourself, there are some builds that will not be able to fortify themselves. And they will be not only very squishy, but kind of unfair because of how squishy they are. You might ask, well, if they're gonna be so squishy, why don't they just balance everybody's health a little bit better? It's because it seems like a lot of these changes, they want people being able to use consumables. There's this whole thing later will be all consumables. We'll talk about that in a second. But essentially, consumables have been pretty harshly nerfed, but it's good for those that are crafters because they'll be able to sell more to people. They'll be able to be more useful for people using arcane. I would say that there are some people that said arcane was, using the arcanum and focusing on that to level or to even, provide stuff to your friends was not really something that you should focus on. While I disagreed because there are a lot of coatings and defense buffs that were helpful from being an arcane focused person, there were still a lot of people still not using that. So now they're just, it seems like they're encouraging people to do that more and make more potions and get people in their company to focus on that skill specifically. So because of that, we have the next note I have is Oakflesh, Balm, and Gemstone dust consumables. I disagree with most of the changes to the consumables in general, except this one and maybe one more. Oakflesh, Balm, and Gemstone dust were very powerful consumables. So they changed this a tiny bit. So updated the duration of Oakflesh, Balm, and Gemstone dust consumables from 5 minutes to 30 seconds. They basically nerfed all of them like this, but this one was extremely powerful and basically made it to where you didn't have to have much. They were very expensive. But since they lasted for 5 minutes, they would last an entire fight, which made it very hard to kill somebody. Again, a lot of these buffs and nerfs are meant for sort of player versus player and to make things a little bit harder in PvE, but most will say, well, why do you need to make it harder? We're not playing against anybody. It's really just, it's a balance between all parties. So these are powerful. It's rough, but you'll see the difference won't be too aggravating. The next note is updated the amount of hits the player can take when using Oakflesh, Balm, and Gemstone dust consumables from 5, 10, 15, 20 to 6, 9, 12, 15. I don't think those are huge changes. Just a little bit more of I need to pay more attention to when I take this potion versus just taking it before the fight and being good. I would say that if you're in a sticky situation, it's more of like an oh crap button than a just do it automatically. Increase the effect from 5%, 7%, 10%, and 15% to 10, 17, 25, 30. Same thing. Any of the percentage stuff is very powerful. This just makes it a little bit more balanced. Siege turrets. All the changes were good. I didn't get a big chance to participate in any wars, but I did watch a couple people play, and it made sense just being a little bit observant. So, increased explosive cannon damage by 30%. And most that watched the Battle for New World will disagree with this, but I'll tell you right now that the explosive cannon damage was not what was killing everybody during that. It was a few other things, and in fact, using the explosive cannon damage to do what people were doing at the beginning of the Battle for New World was a mistake, and it was kind of it was a red herring. We think this is the problem when it really wasn't. So part of this is the capped repeater max fall off. So the max damage fall off from at 90% instead of 100%. So what this does is it makes it so you have to place your repeaters a little bit more effectively. And it also makes it so that you can't just put a repeater way in the back and just unload on a flag. So the reason for this is because repeaters were the problem. So explosive damage is random. Repeaters are not. Repeaters will, like a machine gun in the middle of a forest, a bunch of people, it will just mow people down. It's actually literally what it does. It just mows everybody down. So having that fall off is important so that you have to be a little bit more attentive to where you put it, which makes it easier and more attainable to go destroy if you're the ones being destroyed by it. Repeater damage fall off now starts at 80 meters instead of 60 meters, which again, it is big. So 80 meters is long. So you will have a little bit of space, but at least you'll have that fall off will be there, and you just have to be cognizant of where you put that stuff. So even though it has fall off, you can still put it a little bit further away, but you still have to pay attention to it. Siege weapons. Siege weapons damage now mitigated by armor, which was not a thing, and that was a big part of it. The main mitigation was meant to be from types of damage via potions. Now it's mitigated by armor. So there's a couple of changes I don't think we've talked about yet that will affect mostly open world PvP, but because of this, it will be a little bit more focused on you need to still gear up versus everything else. Siege weapons increase damage by 20%. It's literally because of the next note, or the previous note, which was you can now have your armor will be a little bit more effective. So if you're going into a war, it's going to matter what you're equipped with. Lifestyle buff. Reduced effectiveness of Arcane Blessing lifestyle buff. Corrupted enemy absorption from 20% to 5%. Same thing. It's rough, but it is needed. Okay, perks. Because of the other balances that have happened, I agree with these being in the good section. So fortified recovery effectiveness reduced from 30 to 10%. Keenly fortified effect is essentially a lot of the fortifies that you can put on people reduced because you can stack the heck out of them. And we've already talked about this. The devs are very aware that fortify is very powerful. So this is meant to balance that a little bit. Healing potions. These buffs are, yeah, these buffs are good for PvE. I personally think they go in the bad section for PvP. It is too easy to make distance with somebody, especially from those that don't have ranged weapons, which because of this is a good reason why you may want to always keep a ranged weapon on you. But because of this, it's too easy to get away and just pop a huge potion and get you right back into the game, which I guess for some people is good. For the most part, it makes it very frustrating to chase people down and win a fight against them. So increased base health gained from health potions from 160, 300, 650, 1200, 800 to 200, 400, 900, 1600, 2400. It's, in my opinion, a pretty big gain, but I'm sure that I'm not sure. I've seen people go down to like 10%, make some crazy maneuver, either they cheese the server or whatever it was, get away from me, and then pop a potion and get them right back into the fight. And I'm like, well, okay, I almost got you. What happened? So essentially, confirm your kills as best as you possibly can. Same with with regeneration potions. This is for mana. I don't know. I think this is fine. Mana's fine. I'm sure there's a lot of powerful moves that are going to require your mana, but yeah, same thing. Endurance potions. I don't understand the change for this. I'm sure that there's something out there. They've removed the endurance potions from the alchemy crafting station. This item has been removed from the game. I believe that's because of the endurance changes they made to abilities. It's weird. I think that endurance is nice to have, but I'm sure they saw probably not a lot of people using them. There might also be a different bug with some of the things you need from them. I'm not sure, but they have removed endurance potions from the game. Total. So attribute threshold bonuses, which is pretty big as well. Adjusted the strength 50, 100, and 150 attribute threshold bonuses to prevent the damage bonus from being applied to elemental melee attacks. It will only apply to physical damage. This is to prevent doubling up on the bonus when using elemental conversion gems with those attributes. It was just something people were cheesing, and again, essentially, because of how a lot of the weapons are designed and because of how a lot of the gems are designed, it was simply people were getting double reflection, or not reflection, but double defense damage, or damage defense, essentially, keeping them from essentially taking any damage at all. It seemed there was there was a couple people that I knew were doing this, and we fought them, and while we still did a lot of damage to them. The fight took forever, and they ended up doing way more to us because every hit counted for, like, obviously twice the amount that we did to them. So this is simply just, they're just getting rid of an exploit. War, this one is huge for wars. Small deployables, for example, Inferno Traps and Powder Kegs now have a shared deployment limit of 15 per team in War and Invasion. I do not believe that this change was for the bad performance of wars. I believe it was legitimately because at a certain point, you could lay the whole ground with deployables, essentially making it so that even if the team that was being pushed back had won a fight and were able to push out, they couldn't get anywhere because the deployables were just too much. So with only 15 still seems like a lot, but it across 3 different exits of either side, I'm sure that it's not enough to keep an entire team at bay by itself, because essentially it was buying the attacking team or whatever team was pushing the other team back, buying them time to be able to fully wipe and then come back and still be able to be at the same position. So this is just a normal what have you. Okay. Now, probably to what a lot of people have been looking forward to, the bad. The things that I don't think were necessary changes, or things that I think actually hurt the game a little bit. With this being said, I don't think that there are many of them. I think most of the changes in the game that were made are good, but here are some of the things that were simply seemed like maybe it was the loud minority that complained about them, or that there might be a better way to balance this. We talked about this earlier, the improved spawn rates. It's only bad because I only put it in the bad section because it's difficult to tell what they changed. Obviously, you can see the respawns go really fast, and that could be hurtful because it can get you stuck somewhere and get you eventually killed where you wouldn't have been killed before, but I guess that depends on a very situational. Very situational. They said they fixed various town exploits in the tech section. I feel like they completely neutered anything you needed to do in the town mission. So the exploit was simply a way of leveling fast. And if you were a streamer or you were a YouTuber and you had some influence and you could just get people to feed you stuff, you can do it pretty easily. The problem with that is that seemed like a very specific circumstance. And it also seemed like there were, even if you weren't doing something like that, where you were just focusing town board quests to then just get your levels up, it didn't help you in so many other situations. So now there is and this is we'll talk about this in a second, which is next actually. Actually, I'll just go right into it. So PvP scaling has been reduced. The level difference will matter more in your encounters, meaning that it will take more hits for a lower level player to kill a higher level player, and less hits for a higher level player to kill a lower level player. So, yes, you are now going to get more damage simply because you are higher level. But at the same time, you're not going to have as many skills in your weapon XP. You're not going to have the armor and gear that you need from doing expeditions or going and fighting other players, or really doing anything. Simply you're leveling, which in my opinion is not a bonus. It's not a plus. All that does is make it so that you spent a ton of time leveling, and honestly, I feel like a lot of those people will just get bored of the game. There's so much you're missing from the game, and there's so much you're missing from growing your character that it kind of meant nothing. Granted, with that same thing, there are also some changes in some of the story missions that are level capped, so it's possible that they're attempting to keep you on a path, instead of skipping past certain things, which I understand, but if people are going to try to cheese the game, nothing you do will prevent that. That's just my note to Amazon Game Studio. Nothing you do will prevent people who like cheesing things from cheesing things. That's just what they do. It's in their nature. I try not to do that as much as I possibly can. It's just not my thing. But essentially, the town exploits what they did is they made it harder for people to exploit it, while also making it less desirable to do town missions for anybody else. So essentially punishing everybody. Because the town missions feel like the only reason to do them is if there are things that need to be upgraded in the town, which is good if you're a team player, but for most people who aren't a team player, it's just going to be harder for the people who want things done. Because you get, especially the ones that maybe you don't have, maybe you got to go fishing for salmon, which is strangely difficult to do because sometimes they just don't show up. That takes a lot of time, and if you're not being rewarded for it, it feels kind of pointless because you're probably not doing a huge percentage for that one mission to help the town more. You can probably be doing other things, which by changing this kind of renders a lot of those more difficult missions pointless, thus taking away any reason to even think about doing them. Yeah, so if they were to make those a little bit more powerful instead of nerfing it like they did, I would be more of a fan, but right now I'm just not, because again, I don't think that punishing people who like exploiting the game for really the only reason of just having a higher level and that's it is just not right. Anyway, my minor complaint. I'm sure there are many other things you could do to level, so it's not that big of a deal. Let's see. So also back to combat, reducing the Constitution 250 attribute, which is again I believe the max, a threshold bonus reduction from 80% to 60%. I believe I put this in both good and bad because one, it's good that Constitution full builds will not be able to just tank every little thing, but at the same time, if you're gonna get to 250 on Constitution, you're gonna be lacking in damage quite a bit, so you kind of need that reduction, the damage reduction. I'm kind of half and half on this, which is probably why I put it in both sections. So take that as what you will. I personally think that this didn't need to be changed, or at least meet us halfway and put it at 70%, but I do know a lot of people complained about, well, there's the only thing you need to do is just go full Constitution. I'm like, yeah, full Constitution until level like maybe 30 is good, but after that you're gonna want to start putting stuff into your weapon attributes, because if you don't, you're gonna be just a walking rock. And yeah, nobody's gonna hit you, but they're not gonna pay attention to you either. So I don't know. I'm sure that changes is something that people will argue with me on, but I truly don't believe that needs to happen. The housing trophies got changed. A lot of all the effectiveness of fighting, I believe, mobs got nerfed, which I don't quite understand. So reduced damage both against reduced damage bonus against creature families from 6, 8 to 10, all the way down to 3, 4, and 5%. It's PvE. It's strictly PvE. I don't quite understand the reason for this. I think it's a weird change. I don't know why it's necessary. Considering pretty much everybody is going to have trophies, it's going to balance out anyway. Maybe that's why they did it, because they're like, we don't want everybody having a 10%, or else why did we do this change in the first place? Or why did we even put trophies in the first place? Whatever. Yeah, trophies are kind of difficult to create, so you would think that they'd have a large bonus, but 3, 4, and 5% don't seem like much. I feel like 5% is where you finally start to feel the difference, and that's at the highest tier. So, I don't know. I don't understand this change, but it does exist, so we'll see what happens and how it gets affected at probably near endgame. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they found that 10% was too big at endgame. I found it was just fine, but just fine during mid-game, but we'll see. Elemental damage consumables. So like all the consumables I talked about earlier, all these consumable changes are strange to me. Well, not strange, I get them, but it makes it very difficult to pay attention to. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that people ended up with just tons and tons and tons of consumables in their pocket, or in their bank, or in their storage. I know I had a lot because I just wasn't using them fast enough, but they went from, most of them went from 5 minutes to 30 seconds or 10 seconds, which is kind of crazy. A lot of the effectiveness went down too. So elemental damage, consumables went from 10, 15, 20% down to 9, 12, 15%, which isn't that big of a change, but it is a change. Now, if you look at the creature family absorption consumables, so not only, once again, going back to the housing trophies, the damage got reduced, damage bonus got reduced, but now the defense also got reduced, and it got reduced big too. So, damage. So at the highest level, you were reducing your damage by 50%, which I do agree is a lot, but it went down to 15%, which is, in my opinion, too big of a jump. I think that it could have maybe gone down to 30 or even 25%, but that's, maybe they found that to be too powerful. I don't know, but that's a huge, huge jump. And that's just kind of, that's we'll see. One thing I will say positive about this though is if you're looking to make money, like you're looking to sell things because of your craft, well, potions may be a new avenue to get into. Because if they only last, 5 or 30 seconds instead of 5 minutes, people will be drinking them down like they're Kool-Aid. So hopefully that will be a big change. Anyway, these are the changes that are in the release notes. Again, I will leave the link in the description. I think that most of these are very good and are helping the game a lot. So I'm excited for the release of the game. Remember that there is a giveaway in this description as well. Hopefully we don't get a lot of bots that enter it, and it's just you all lovely human beings that have been subscribed to the channel and watched this whole entire video. So enjoy yourselves. Until next time, I'll see you in Aeternum. Have a good one.